They lived together in Delhi during the postings there. She did create a viable balance between her professional and personal life. Nirupama pursued her passion for music, and as was just mentioned, her first commercial album has just been released. Srimati Nirupama's life and philosophy are portrayed in vivid detail in the chapter by her in the book 30 Women in Power. It is a must read for all of us. Madam Nirupama Menon Rao has struggled hard to create a niche and identity for herself as an independent professional. Introducing former Indian Foreign Secretary and Ambassador to USA and China, Srimati Nirupama Menon Rao, an accomplished doer and a winner by all standards. We are enthused and really proud of you, madam. Thank you.
Thank you. A very good morning to all of you. Mr. Vivek Krishna-Govind, Mrs. Anjali Menon, Maria, Mr. Madhav Chandran, and all the distinguished ladies and gentlemen present here this morning. It's wonderful to see the ladies in an overwhelming majority. I think we need to apply this concept to life beyond this conference too. I was told by Maria, who is the dynamic mover and shaker of this event, and much more I'm sure, that the theme for this conference is about life and about inspiration, fulfillment, empowerment, and the whole sweet mystery of life, as they say. When I look back on my own life, I always go back to my origins in Kerala, this state, which to me symbolizes so much of the openness and inclusiveness of Indian culture and civilization. The other day I was listening to a lecture by the distinguished Indian historian, Dr. Sanjay Subramaniam, and he spoke about Vasco da Gama. And for many of us in our minds, we think of Vasco da Gama having discovered India, for the Western world, that is, and enduring and unique about our culture as a country. And of course, Kerala is very much a part of that. We were not like the civilizations and cultures, let's say, of the South American continent or the Caribbean. We know about the Mayas and the Incas and the Aztecs, but their capacity to withstand the onslaught of colonialism or the influx of the foreigner or of strange influences from farther afield was so different from ours. Our culture and civilization was in no ways knocked off its feet by the entry of the West or the advent of colonialism. And I think that is what makes us so special, and that is what should imbue in us a sense of confidence about ideas and influences from every hemisphere and all across the world. And that is particularly true and essential, I think, for the country today, because we talk of globalization and we talk of the influences of foreign investment and foreign capital and new ideas coming to us. And I think we should always internalize within ourselves this consciousness and this realization that we have the capacity to absorb new ideas, and we're not going to be disadvantaged in any way because of that. I think it's particularly essential that we remember to retain the openness of mind. And when it comes to gender and when it comes to feminism, now I know feminism sometimes, raises the antennae, particularly among our brothers and husbands and sons and the males in society. But it's really, what is feminism? It's really speaking about the equality of opportunity for the female sex and the acceptance of the premise that women need much more voice and agency in society and in policy making and in public affairs and essentially in all walks of life, because the contribution of women to the betterment of mankind and womankind must be realized. And I've tried to apply that concept in the field of public policy, particularly foreign policy, the area in which I worked for many decades. There is a lot of talk today, particularly in the Scandinavian countries, about feminism in foreign policy. And as I've tried to reflect on how we apply that concept to our region, to South Asia, and I'm not just talking of India, I'm talking of the subcontinent, as we all learned about it in our geography lessons, and what the world refers to as South Asia today. Now, when you look at South Asia, and if you were to apply the concept of a feminist foreign policy, I think you would see much more of an infusion of humanism into the way we apply this policy. What about, the right to development for this region? What about the right to alleviate poverty? What about the right to raise the rights of women and give them more voice and agency, as I just said? So when you apply that concept to our region, all these ideas come to mind for me. Long years ago, our first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, said that the soul of India, the soul, the Atma, the soul of India, as he saw it, was feminine. We all speak of Mother India, and that essentially, I think, implies that the soul of India is really feminine. And we have many definitions of the feminine in our country. And I'm thinking now when Mrs. Indira Gandhi was the Prime Minister, she was associated with the image of the goddess Durga, the slayer of demons. This came into the fore, especially when Bangladesh was created and the successful operations of 1971, and the application of feminism in public policy. And it's essentially the art of getting peace to triumph over war and conflict, to consolidate of a concept of a South Asian commons. I don't know if I'm explaining myself well enough. The concept of a commons really means, the concept of an area where we can consolidate our views together, where we can collect together and create a majority of voices that speak for peace and reconciliation, and not just bait each other, as you see on television every day, in a kind of blood sport where each one is jostling with the other for space. So I think we have to, as women, what can we bring to the public space is the question I ask all of you, and I think you need to reflect on that. Why is it that we're not able to contribute more to the discourse on such issues? Why is it that we just apply the masculine concepts that are handed down to us as, in fact, as the gospel truth, as it were? Why can't we learn to question? Why can't we learn to provide more of a humanist aspect to public policy in our region? And I think all the women of the region need to come together in this context, not just the women of India, but I think we need to look at our sisters in the other South Asian countries also, and create a fruitful debate on these issues. I'm not saying that we will be able to solve the outstanding issues that have troubled us for 7 decades now, but at least I think we can amplify our voices as women to provide more substance and meaning to these issues of dialogue, of better communication, of more connectivity in our region. Now, when it comes to all of you here and what the KMA does, many of you are women entrepreneurs and you are creating wealth, you are creating a better life for those who work with you, and you are empowering women in the process. And I think Kerala has led the way in many senses for the rest of the country in this regard. Because, you know, when you go to other states of India, they always speak about the position of women in our state. They speak about the near 100% female literacy that has existed here. And I think of the many generations of women who have contributed to this image for Kerala. And in my own field of diplomacy, one of our most eminent diplomats, female diplomats, we don't hear about her so often these days, was Srimati Lakshmi Menon. And she was a Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs in Prime Minister Nehru's administration. And she was a great voice, a great thought leader in the field of women's education and a lot of social issues that concerned women in our country in the early 20th century and during the freedom struggle. And as a woman diplomat, as one of the leading women diplomats of our country, she was able to bring much respect and recognition for the position of women in our society when she spoke at the United Nations or when she dealt with sensitive and delicate diplomatic negotiations. I'm thinking even after the war with China, when she was a voice for India, trying to lead the process to get the world to recognize where we were on this issue and what was needed to be done to bring some settlement. Of course, we're still searching for that settlement, but I think we've been able to, in many ways, forge a relationship with China, which is very different from our relationship with our other neighbor, Pakistan, for instance. Because I think we need more representation. You know, when you talk of the rights of women, you need more representation for women. Otherwise, how will they exercise their rights? The proportion of women in public policy today is far too little, I believe, for that voice to be heard. Of course, the numbers have gone up over the decades, but in my view, when you look at parliament, when you look at the legislatures, apart from the panchayats where you have 33% representation thanks to two constitutional amendments, but in the other fields, you need many, many more women. And why are they not coming into this field is the question you must ask. Are there hindrances? Are there, certain obstacles that they are facing? Or is there a lack of confidence about their abilities? The men don't lack confidence. If you go into a meeting, you will find that the men are willing to speak 19 to the dozen, but a woman will think 100 times before she's, able to get a word in, or, most of them at least, are not as confident as they should be about what they know. They are repositories of knowledge and in their domain, but I think, they have to find their voice, because they can bring, as I said, a lot of substance and meaning to the formation of public policy and the taking of decisions. So we need more voice, we need more representation, we need more exercise of the rights of women, and we need more confidence and assertiveness among women. And I think that is essential. I don't think we should worry about saying that we sound too raucous, or that we sound too voluble, or that we speak too much. I think you must understand that in the field of policy, unless your voice is heard, you are not going to be recognized and you're not going to be able to contribute. So I think that is a message that we have to give to all our young people, especially our young women. Communication is really the lifeblood of all that we do today, in every field. I'm not just talking of the media, I'm just talking about, in every sphere of life. You have to develop a coherent and a cogent method of communication, and of course, what you have to say has to have substance and value. And I'm sure you'll be many, many women can do that. So I think the leadership field is really open at this moment for women. First of all, we don't have enough women in the field. Their voices are not heard enough, and they're not bringing, their values to bear on the formation of policy. So it's very important, I think, that we should remember that in all that we do. Of course, I'm sure that you will have many ideas on this subject based on your own experience. I can say that in my own experience of the Foreign Service, which was my career, when I entered the Foreign Service and when I filled in the application to write the exam, I had to confirm that I was unmarried, because married women could not apply to join the Foreign Service when I took the examination. Of course, they were professionals if they were married. I mean, these were conscious, say that the women were competent, there was nothing that distinguished them from the men in the field, that it was unfair that this requirement was there, but he couldn't do away with it. And she was the first woman Indian Foreign Service officer who had been denied promotion to the level of secretary in the Foreign Ministry, secretary to the Government of India. Besides the Foreign Secretary, we have 3 or 4 other secretaries in the Foreign Ministry who deal with different parts of different regions. So she had gone to the court saying that this was discrimination, that she'd been denied, despite her qualifications, she'd been denied this promotion. And when the matter went up to the court, of course, the ministry, and I think for all of us, we are not yet ready to dismiss the problem. So I think we should remember that. Despite the different achievements, you see all of us here, you see the struggle that we've gone through. But that struggle is not yet over. The struggle is not yet over for any one of us, particularly the younger ones, the younger generation that should be there in the, as I said, developing this concept of the commons, where men and women share responsibilities equally. There's a Chinese saying, which you might all know, that women hold up half the sky. And if we don't hold up half that sky, the sky will fall. So I'd like really for you to remember that. Of course, in our society today, this whole concept of violence against women is foremost in our minds. And when you talk of women in public policy, and you talk of women making legislation and speaking out, it's very important for us to remember that. Why is it that it happens in our society? Why is it that there is misogyny? Why is it there are entrenched stereotypes about the role of women and their place in society? How can we change this? Is it through education? Is it through the right family orientation? Because it all begins within the home. How do we encourage women to speak out against such violence and to be brave about speaking out? How do we make sure that culprits and trespassers are punished and that the law applies to all of them, that there is no miscarriage of justice? I think these are all questions that we have to ask ourselves, and to understand that, that our time as women has come, but the times are difficult, they are troubled, and we have to sort a lot of issues out through dialogue, through better law enforcement, through meticulous application of, what the rights of women are in our society and how they deserve the protection and they should those who violate that space around women have to face the consequences of their actions. And I think that is something else that we must keep in mind and not forget, especially us women who have had the opportunity to speak out and to be heard. I think the important thing is that we must have that kind of support, and that is really the wind beneath your wings, as it were. So I wish you the very best in whatever you aim to do, as they say in the Navy, I wish you fair winds and following seas, especially since Kochi is such an important port for India and facing the ocean. Today we call it not just the Arabian Sea, but we call it the Indo-Pacific. We are connected, the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Oceans. And that has become the arena, in fact, for big power competition. And let us as women, again, introduce these themes I spoke of connectivity, of dialogue, of better communication with all the women in our region, so that we bring to bear our voice in the, as I said, the determination of policy for our century, the 21st century. Thank you.
Thank you. Films are journeys that filmmakers lead us into. If the journey is interesting to the audience, that's what counts, not length. Ladies and gentlemen, it is with great pride I introduce you to the director and screenwriter, and moreover a very good friend of mine. We were classmates in college. I will not tell you the year. And behind widely successful movies like Bangalore Days and Ustad Hotel. Her films quietly changed the way people perceive the movies. She showed us that childhood was an important part of the films, and the subject she dealt with so far required a close-to-life treatment. Though she grew up outside India, she is a typical Mashi non-resident who is in love with the land that she's been away from. She's so humble when she admits that she's not kind of a born writer, but Anjali has learned not to worry about the norms she may or may not know. You can see the love for minimalism in her movies. She finds that the world too crowded with people, words and thoughts. Too many things that mean nothing. So in the created world where she has a choice, she adds what is just relevant. Anjali completed her cinema studies from London Film School. Her debut movie, Manjari Kuru, was screened on International Film Festival of India. The movie set in the background of the social life of 1980s of Kerala. Anjali took inspiration from her childhood and teenage years and the joint family system in her ancestral home in North Kerala to weave her story. The film won 5 Grand Jury Awards, including the Best Film, Best Director, Best Screenplay, and the Best Emerging Talent at the South Asian International Film Festival at New York. Anjali's second movie, Ustad Hotel, also had the essence of relationship, and it has also made people think that they are beloved ones while watching the movie. It went on to win 3 national awards, earning Anjali a deserved award for Best Dialogues. Her third movie, Bangalore Days, mapped the transformation stage of 3 youngsters who happens to be cousins and best friends. Like her other movies, family has been a minefield of stories, and Bangalore Days appeared to be a casting coup boasting many actors with their individual strength. A simple film